Ms. McGill, at Penn, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's rules or code of conduct? Yes or no?
If the speech turns into conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
I am asking specifically calling for the genocide of Jews. Does that constitute bullying or harassment?
If it is directed and severe or pervasive, it is harassment.
So the answer is yes.
It is a context-dependent decision, Congresswoman.
It's a context-dependent decision. That's your testimony today. Calling for the genocide of Jews is depending upon the context. That is not bullying or harassment. This is the easiest question to answer yes, Ms. McGill. So is your testimony that you will not answer yes?
If it if the
yes
speech
or
becomes
no?
if the speech becomes conduct, it can be harassment. Yes.
Conduct meaning committing the act of genocide? The speech is not harassment? This is unacceptable, Ms. McGill. I'm going to give you one more opportunity for the world to see your answer. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's code of conduct when it comes to bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be harassment.
The answer is yes.
Well, that, my friends, was a masterclass on how to lose your job in under 60 seconds. I'm sure many of you have heard by now of the disgraced UPenn president who was forced to resign after a brutally embarrassing testimony before Congress last week. You saw it yourself right there. You saw UPenn's president, Liz McGill, basically commit professional suicide when she could not resoundingly and directly declare that calls for mass genocide are the very definition of harassment and bullying. She actually claimed, as you heard, that calls for genocide were contextual. They were context specific. In other words, when there are open calls for exterminating an ethnicity, we have to bear in mind the context for those calls. Now, keep that in mind because I think that's key to understanding the lunacy that's taken over our nation's universities, particularly our Ivy Leagues. I'm going to show you that in a moment. Clearly, what helped with the decision to throw her under the bus was the announcement of UPenn losing a $100 million donation after that disastrous hearing. Ross Stevens, founder and CEO of Stone Ridge Asset Management, watched the congressional testimony of McGill, which caused him to revoke a limited partnership donation he gave to the university back in 2017, a donation now estimated to be worth $100 million. And of course, UPenn is not alone. We've been seeing these bigwig donors pulling their multi-million-dollar gifts from Ivy Leagues all over the nation now that their rabid anti-Semitism that's been fostering on college campuses for years now is coming to the surface for all to see. And that leads to the critique of her resignation. Actually, in the end, many are saying this is all a charade, it's a farce, and that's precisely because someone even more radical is going to take this UPenn president's place. But I was listening to Pennsylvania State Senator Doug Mastriano on this, and I think he's right. He thinks this forced resignation does indeed send a message to Harvard and MIT, who also failed in their testimony before Congress, that not having a moral compass regarding your rules of free speech on campus and calling for the extermination of any people group is itself a call to violence, not being able to articulate that clearly and unequivocally will get you fired. Or at the very least, it's going to radically and adversely affect the university's bottom line with donors. But as I'm sure many of you know, McGill wasn't the only left-wing lunatic testifying before Congress last week. Harvard professor Claudine Gay is under severe fire to tenure her resignation for an equally disastrous testimony. In fact, more and more information about Gay is coming out. There's now a report out alleging that Gay plagiarized portions of her PhD dissertation. Moreover, in all the years she's been in the university, she's apparently only published 11 peer-reviewed articles in her entire career. She also presided over a number of cancellations of speakers and profs, so obviously she's now under fire to pack her bags as well. But what sense should we make of all of this, well, let's say nonsense? Well, I'm going to show you exactly what's going on in these universities. But first, gang, you've seen how much people love Trump, especially UFC fighters. UFC fighters love number 45, and Trump loves them. But have you ever wondered what they do to manage their pain? Well, you don't have to anymore, because a fellow patriot and good friend of this channel is precisely the one who provides relief to that pain, and he's here to do the same for you. We all know that as we age, aches and pains are normal, but they don't have to be. And that's where the groundbreaking medical scientist Clint Winters comes in. Now, Clint's a renowned health expert who's unveiled a natural pain reliever that's taking the world by storm. It's called CB2. It's the 100% drug-free way to get full-body pain relief without dangerous meds, and it is the official pain reliever for the fighters in the UFC. So whatever you do, make sure to click on that link below and check out Clint's amazingly informative report on how CB2 is changing lives by providing safe and powerful relief at a fraction of the cost of pain pills. Click on that link below right now. First and foremost, we have to understand the operative ideology that has rendered these professors so seemingly morally bankrupt. That ideology, in a word, is, of course, wokeness. And when all is said and done, wokeness is essentially the sanctification of victimhood. Wokeness is the sanctification of victimhood. In other words, woke sensibilities always take the side of the perceived victim and always denounce as morally reprehensible the perceived victimizer. And one of the key tenets of this victim-victimizer bifurcation is that we know who belongs to which group based on our subgroups. So that means race, the color of our skin, gender, our sexual orientation, right? Identity politics, right? In other words, whether or not you belong to the victim group or the victimizer group depends on your identity in relation to these other subgroups, your race, your ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation alike. And again, here's the key. Anything that offends the groups designated as oppressed as victims is considered a hostile act by the oppressor. This is exactly what the UPenn president meant by it's contextual. If you call for the genocide of one of these protected victim groups, then by definition, that's a violation of woke moral standards. You're reprehensible. You need to be canceled. But if you're a victim and you call for genocide, well, then that's just an expression of the outrage that is the natural response to oppression and victimization. This is what these university so-called academics actually believe. So that's the lunacy that's sort of taken over our universities. But then there's the question, why are these women who are so obviously subpar, so underwhelming in their academic and intellectual pedigree, why are they the presidents of these Ivy League universities? And the answer to that is simple. In more and more of our woke society, we value ideological conformity more than competence. Have you ever noticed how bad our service industries have become of late? Have you tried flying on an airplane of late? Or just stayed in a hotel? Our standards of excellence have eroded over the last couple of years, particularly during and after COVID, because more and more our society values ideological conformity more than competence or conscientiousness. DEI standards are more important than service standards, and our society is suffering for it. And we're seeing that front and center in our Ivy League universities. No one in their right mind thinks those presidents were hired solely on their merits. Obviously not. And just in case anyone thinks I'm being sexist here, note how I showed you how ably the UPenn president was destroyed by another woman, Representative Elise Stefanik. Again, for me, competence, not ideological conformity, is the standard for society, for a competent and conscientious society, that is. When ideological conformity trumps competence, the social systems as a whole begin to break down. The system, the processes begin to unravel. And that's exactly what we're seeing happening on our Ivy League campuses. Now, ironically, it looks like a civil war from within the left is going to ultimately take wokeness out, as more and more donors and benefactors withdraw their considerable sums from the coffers of colleges. Don't be surprised to see that ideological conformity begin to implode. But first, gang, as many of you know, we have unfortunately been completely and totally demonetized, which is putting our daily communication with one another at risk like never before. Now, we are actively working on getting this resolved, but as things stand, this channel has, without any warning, been totally and completely demonetized. And as Elon Musk said so powerfully last week, the whole point of these demonetization efforts is to deliberately try to make us patriots feel like we're all alone. They want to sever our relationship with each other and force on us a kind of digital solitary confinement so as to demoralize us and discourage us like never before. But to their horror, it's not working. Over this past week, you have carried this channel like never before. We've had more people than ever make the courageous decision to bypass big tech and join our Insiders Club. We have direct access to one another that can never be interrupted by big tech overlords. Over the last 7 days, we've seen literally thousands of you come to our rescue. And you've done it in two ways. You've signed up for our free newsletter and you've officially joined our Insiders Club. Those two acts alone are enough for us to collectively stand together and never, ever have our relationship severed. So I'm inviting the rest of you to do the same today, just by clicking on that link below and signing up for our newsletter and joining our Insiders Club. You are guaranteeing that there is nothing that big tech can do to get between us and make us feel like we're in a digital solitary confinement. It's as simple as clicking on the link below right now and opting into our free email newsletter. And once you do that, you can financially support us by joining our Insiders Club. Gang, from the bottom of my heart, I cannot thank you enough for your support during a time like this. You are my heroes, and it will be my mission to express my appreciation for every single one of you each and every week.